Beacon City School District. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Kelly. Present. Here. Delayed. Here.
Here. Here.
Here. Here. Thank you. Pat, would you mind fire exits?
Exits are in the back of the LGI.
Thank you. Open to the public. Are there did anyone sign up? Do you mind looking? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a public comment?
Good evening, board, members, and people watching at home. My name is Dennis Pavlov. For those of you who don't know me, a lot of people say I'm sorry to hear that, but it is what it is. So I'm here tonight to bring up what I brought up last year regarding the human Christmas tree. The date is November 5th. And the rain date for that is November 12th. So last year we didn't have a rain date. Everything was rushed. So now we took our time and we did the form. We did it. We redid it. In case you don't know what it's all about, those of you who don't know what it's about, we're going to get a group of people and we're going to form a Christmas tree. And you're going to bring a lantern and you're going to bring a flashlight, or you're going to bring a light somehow, a light, and we're going to make a tree on the Pop Warner Hill over Memorial Field. And that's going to be it's going to be called the Tree Glows and Beacon. I have a photographer coming to take pictures. Hopefully we can get it out there on Facebook, on the internet, and hopefully we can be seen for miles. My two other comments are as follows. When I was here talking about my comments on regarding Columbus Day, Indigenous People Day, I understand this board wanted to create a committee, but I just think the committee was the wrong way to go, because they were deadlocked 3-3, and that just kicked the can further down the road without having a resolution to this standing conflict, not conflict, but standing, going back and forth. Let me phrase it like that. I believe we should have had it put both days on the calendar. This way here, everybody's satisfied. What name is first and on second, whatever. Both names on the calendar, call it a day, and everybody's happy. That suggestion wasn't taken, and I'm okay with it. It's whatever you did. I just think the process that you went through was wrong, in my opinion. So I wanted to say that. And one last comment. I'm not trying to be a damper on the exchange process. I know I heard a lot of good things about it as well. But if we can think about Natalie Holloway and what happened there, the local in another country. So if we can, I'm not trying to be a damper. I'm not trying to be against the exchange program. I'll say long as how, but Natalie Holloway was also a student, and one of the locals, whatever. I'm just saying. So whatever. I just wanted to throw it out there. So that's my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on. In the agenda, we have 2 workshops tonight. The first, we're going to hear from Brian Soltish regarding a school trip to Boston.
So just to provide a little bit of background just about process, our policy doesn't require a formal board approval of an overnight trip like this, but we've created a procedure or practice where we talk about it at the board level before it goes out to to either the grade level or the school that we're planning it. So that's what we're doing tonight for 2 trips that are new.
Right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. So as you know, 8th grade, we've been taking them to Washington DC for the last, COVID messed us up a little bit, but about 4 groups have gone. The trips have been very successful, and we'd like to extend that to our 7th graders and give them some exposure on a one-night trip, which would be 2 days. So working through the same company, which is Explorica, that we're currently using for DC. We're hoping to go May 16th and 17th, so it would be a Thursday, Friday. They're overnight Thursday. We come back Friday night, so we leave very early in the morning Thursday to go to Boston. 2 days in Boston, you can get a lot done there. It lines up really nicely with the 7th grade social studies curriculum, with the American Revolution. They have the Freedom Trail and the USS Constitution there. So I have a set, kind of tentative itinerary if anybody had questions on where we might be going, what we might be seeing. So we have a itinerary that's set. I do have a price that's already been quoted to me by the company. So this trip would be $368 per student as it is right now on the form. That price I actually thought was really pretty good in comparison to the cost that we have for DC. The busing just has really become a lot when you're taking the luxury buses and they're with you all day long. That really consumes a lot of the price. But we would definitely be going through the company, and I'm happy to answer any questions people might have in terms of itinerary or what it might look like for the students or their families. We certainly would be looking to help take any student that was unable to financially afford the trip. We would be trying to do scholarships similar to how we do with DC, both with fundraising through the PTO, donations from the community, and other avenues that we do have.
And just to speak about that part of it, last spring, we had the largest group of 8th graders go to DC. I think for those, it's kind of a varied bunch of efforts that go into it. So the PTO has been really great. Brian has also worked with some individual donors or some business donations that have come through. And then as a district, we're not buying or paying for a student to go, but we have started a practice of paying for the chaperones to go, and that frees up some, actually quite a few additional funds for us to scholarship students. So what was the number of students for DC last year? 160 something?
No. I think we ended up at 133,
133.
something around that. It was our biggest group.
Right.
Prior to that, obviously, the year before, we
Right.
took what was left of a COVID group, so
Right.
that was 45 10th graders. But the 2 8th grade trips the years before were about 120 and 115, if I remember correctly.
So we keep trying to edge that up with different fundraising and creative financing on our part, because we really don't want the financial part to be an excuse. We have the same attitude with Boston. We do have parents that don't want to send their students on these trips because it's overnight and far away. It's not an insignificant number of people, but we really are working hard to try to, have a higher number grow every single year.
I could say we have not denied any student yet that was looking for scholarship money to go on the trip that we're aware of. If they didn't come to us, it's possible that may have been the reason for a family. But any family that's come forward, we've figured out a way to get them on the trip.
And is this part of our strategic plan in terms of like the signature experiences for every grade, or is there an additional 7th grade?
We haven't solidified it yet, but last year 7th grade went to
They went to Liberty Science Center. We'd still
Yeah.
like to do another trip with 7th grade. That would be more of a everybody goes no matter what trip on a one day. Whether that be Liberty Science Center or not is up in the air. But this would definitely be, something I'd love to see every year. 7th grade is going to Boston, 8th grade is going to DC. I think it puts us ahead of a lot of other what a lot of other districts are offering their students in terms of opportunity. Taking them on the DC trip has really been eye-opening for just how much they learn and how much they enjoy it. So I'd love to get them a shot in 7th grade to do something as well.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I could tell you I appreciate the effort that the school does to give these unique experiences to students, so I'm open for whatever trips you could set up.
Yeah, I'm open for the trips too. I am a little worried about parents having to pay 2 years in a row, having done this before. Do you do like, Brian, organized like fundraisers, like as a grade, like, you know, to try to have them offset? But I don't
So
remember.
the biggest one we do is the PTO runs like the Gertrude Hawk
Okay.
chocolate fundraiser, and they went from doing that for the PTO to allowing every student that does that money goes directly to their child for their trip. So we have had kids fully pay their trip on. I mean, you know that you sell a lot of chocolate if you do that, but you can get 40 to. Gertrude Hawk has changed a little bit, so now instead of just automatically getting 50%, it depends on how much the group sells. We did hit the mark last year to get to 50%, and if we have 2 grades going on a trip, we'll hit the 50% because enough of them will be out selling. But we had some kids get $300 off their trip. Some kids get fully paid trip. You know, a lot of kids would get $75, $80. But that is a good one. I have to do some legwork on my end to bring a fundraiser back that I worked through the city with. But we've had a changeover in the city, and I just want to kind of touch base with them and see if they're still open to the fundraiser we've done in the past.
Okay.
Is that the fire?
Yeah, we did a ride to school in the fire truck, and that was kind of what helped put a lot of funds into our scholarship. They do have a new fire chief, and it's been a number of years since we've done that with COVID, so I just kind of want to check in with them and see if that's something that they'll be open to again. But the elementary kids tend to really like that one.
Are there any other questions? It sounds great. I appreciate your effort to make it happen. I think any opportunity to travel for kids at a young age is really important, so thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The parent meeting will be Wednesday, September 27th for the.
And then I have a second trip to just bring forward. Coach Atwell couldn't be here tonight, but it is for the 2024 Beacon Bulldog baseball team. And they would like to go from Saturday, March 23rd to March 30th to like a baseball kind of like tournament experience at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So they want to do fundraising to do that. There's, I think, a fair number of high school baseball teams in the area that do something similar or go to this very event. So I think it's been something they've been wanting to do for a while. And so it's obviously a much smaller group of kids and a kind of a smaller trip in terms of that. It's just the team. But we need to bring it before the board as well. And if you have any questions, I will relay it back to Mr. Giametta and Mr. Atwell and talk to them about it. But we wanted to do this tonight too.
I like that they're splitting the cost with Smack and Kill.
Yeah.
I could tell you when I was in high school, we went down to Cocoa Beach as the high school baseball team. So that was like every other year they would do that. So it made sure that kids coming up had at least the opportunity to go at least one time during their career.
Are there opportunities like this for other teams, or is this purely a baseball thing?
Mr. Giametta would be able to answer that probably better. My guess is for certain sports there probably are, and some there's probably less. But there's always tournaments and whatnot going on. It seems like for almost every sport. But I don't know the specific answer to that.
Is there an estimated cost per student for this?
What's that?
Is there an estimated cost per student for this?
I don't have that. I can get that to you. I think they're going to do some pretty engaged fundraising to pay.
I imagine.
I just think as a former player, coach, it is an amazing experience to be able to do that in high school, to travel like that. And I know from just future, when they want to do something like that, it's a lot of fundraising, but they do it because they really want to go. And it's something, I would just hope that having this one kind of be, maybe not the first one, but the first one in a while, that other teams might jump on board and start fundraising more and looking to do other tournaments, maybe not as far, as Myrtle Beach, but it's a great experience for the athletes.
Any other questions or comments? Everyone
All right.
good? Okay. Thank you.
And just to, Meredith, to answer your question from my perspective about the Boston trip, I think, we're not necessarily creating these incredibly specific definitions for things, but for some of, for the signature experiences, I think our thought is like, and Brian said it, like ones where we want every student to go. And so we are going to put everything into that. Those are going to tend to be trips you can do in a day, just for cost. And so we have a number of those planned for this year. We don't want to not do things like this, especially with the efforts going into fundraising and scholarships and whatnot. So I'm excited to be able to provide both. And I know Brian and his team have gotten pretty good at these trips, and so I'm excited about the Boston one. I think it will be a good experience. So thank you.
And I appreciate that. I mean, that's kind of why I asked, because
Yeah.
I do think those signature experiences, I love that idea, and I think that the foundation of that idea is that everyone can participate, and there is a barrier here, but I think we had a long history of not doing anything because we didn't want people to not be able to go, and I think that that's really not okay either. I think we can find a balance there.
Right. And I think one of the challenges, just back to my principal days, and I talk with Brian a fair amount, is a lot of folks will reach out and say, we need help to do this, but sometimes it's also us reaching out to people too. And so that's always part of it, because for a variety of reasons, sometimes people don't want to make that step, and I understand that. And so we try to do some of that behind the scenes thing to identify people who need help to go to these as well, who are interested. So.
And I think some of it is just, it'll take a few years for people to get used to the idea, and maybe even the foundation can figure out a way to participate more in supporting it. So that's great. Reviewing the agenda, there are no additions or corrections. We actually don't have any content for executive session. Are there any questions that any board members have that need to be asked in executive session before we move on? Okay. So superintendent's report.
I might need a second to get
Okay.
Nope.
While we're waiting, I'm passing around the tax warrant for everyone to sign, so don't leave tonight. That's all.
So I just wanted to give a brief update on the capital project and just where we are with elementary class sizes, and I'll talk about next steps for the capital project, along with, we have some pictures of the current state of what happened this summer, and then it's been an ongoing effort for years with elementary class size. I want to just provide a little bit of information there, and then talk about next steps there too. So. This summer was the kind of easier summer, quote unquote. We had less work happening, but we had work at Sargent, we had work at Forrestal, we had work at Rombout, and some roofing at the high school. And so we have some pictures of some of the work that was happening. So at both Forrestal and Sargent, you have Sargent here, their hallways got new ceiling tiles and new lighting, which doesn't sound super exciting, but the look of it is just so much brighter. It's really, as someone who's traveled these hallways quite a bit, it is a hugely noticeable difference. And so we have some pictures of that work. And so this was exciting to get done this summer. We have a new boiler at Sargent. This was very, very necessary. It's still, they're still putting the final installation work together, but we'll be ready for cold weather. And then along with the new driveway / parking lots off to the right there, but we have new accessibility at Sargent. You can see the second sort of railing is an accessible entrance into the school, which was lacking, and so that was also just a very much needed change. And then that's just part of the new driveway. It also is where the buses come in, and we were happy to get that done too at Sargent this year. Roundabout, this is just half of it, but we have new parking lots, driveways, bus drop-offs, both here at the kiosk and at the other side of the building. Switching back to Roundabout for a second, we also we're doing electrical work, and we're actually going to be postponing that. It can be done in just a few days, but they didn't have all the parts that they needed, so the plan is to do that over winter break right now. Forrest also got the ceiling tile lighting treatment, and that is the front entryway to the building seen from inside. And if you've ever spent time in the front entryway of Forest, it used to be very dark, very, very dark, and now it's just very, very bright, and you can see everything, and it just looks great. That's just a different view of that. The lighting is really well done. This is the lower floor hallway. So they also got the new lighting and new ceiling tile, but they also had those windows were boarded up, and so those windows were put back. And so again, this hallway used to be very, very dark, and this is where fourth grade is, third grade is, and the art room. And so they just kind of had this very dark hallway for years, and now it's just really bright and fresh and nice. So that was an exciting change as well. Forest also received a new boiler. So capital project next steps, and just about those things, all of those things, everything we did this past summer is all part of a huge review process that we do, a building condition survey. We have a team of people work on that, both our employees, our director of facilities, and other administrators, and our architecture team and our engineering team, something that's required by the state. And we're just in a constant, basically, a constant effort to improve every aspect of our buildings, from the outside to things like parking lots, inside things like lighting, new boilers, just essential parts of our functioning. And next summer, Phase D is a much more involved summer where we're going to be doing more of that kind of work. We're also going to be doing new unit ventilators in a lot of our classrooms. We did a lot of that in the previous capital project. But we also have a lot of learning spaces that are going to be transformed next summer too. That said, cost projections, surprise, surprise, are higher now due to everything that's been going on the last few years. So we're doing the bid process right now. Early October, we're going to be reviewing the bids and making some decisions. Hopefully we can get as much done as possible as we planned, but there may be some decision making happening in October in terms of keeping the whole project within our budget that was voter approved. And then just, this is a very brief elementary class size overview. In a future meeting, we'll look at middle school and high school class sizes as well. So when I say 59 elementary classes, I'm just talking about either gen ed or collab classes, special and gen ed classes. So we have 59 of those homeroom type classes. Our average is 17 students per class across the 4 elementary schools. We only have 12 classes that are 20 plus, all under 25 students, which was not maybe a written in stone goal of ours years ago, but it was definitely something we were pushing for to get our classes under 25. They're all well under. And so this has just been something that's been a really huge budget initiative and implementation initiative of the district for the last 6-7 years. And so we're able to keep doing this. However, we've gotten so good at reducing these class sizes, we're going to be looking at ways to make sure we're doing this as cost effectively as possible in the upcoming budget cycle and future budget cycles. One of the hard things is always trying to predict how many kindergarten students we're going to be getting, and so that sometimes is where we might get a little bit off. With more pre-K in the district, I think that's going to probably help us with that prediction. But I also want to say this average is pretty consistent amongst all 4 elementary schools. All 4 elementary schools, school average is under 20. South has the lowest average. It's around 15 students per class. Glenham and Sargent are about like 18.2, 18.6, something like that. Forest Hill's like 17.8. So they're all really well within range of each other. And I just wanted to update you on that. We'll take, obviously middle school and high school is different, totally different thing. Scheduling plays a large role in that. But we think looking at this is essential, both kind of matching past priorities to what we're doing now, but also linking this to future budget planning. So we want to take a look at middle school and high school class sizes, number of students taking classes, just to make sure, we're using our resources wisely. And then I have one last announcement, I think. We received really exciting news over the weekend, I think. So one of our students at the high school, Vanessa Murphy, scored a perfect score in the AP drawing exam. She's one of 300 students in the world who received that score. So just huge congratulations to her and the art department and Mr. Lanz is the teacher of that class for that accomplishment. When I was reading it, and I was kind of like, perfect score, I'm not used to that. This is all new. And then when they said 1 of 300 in the world, I was like, did I say in the world? I said in the world. So, so it's, speaking of budget initiatives, adding some of these AP classes has also been something that the board has worked on over the years. And so that class was a new addition a few years ago. So it's really cool to see a student achieve at such a high level in that class in just a few years in. Any questions about capital project, class size?
I have a comment. I didn't mention this in my board comments last meeting, but some of the board was able to tour the schools right before school started, and all the schools looked really great, and the lighting makes a huge difference. It's not a very glamorous thing to talk about, but the experience is very, very different, I think, there. And I also just wanted to commend the custodial staff because they really, you could tell how much care they had put into cleaning the schools and having them ready for the students. And I want to give a special shout out to the custodianette Sargent who infused glitter into the wax floors because it just was amazing. You think most of the elementary students are about half my size, and so they're that much closer to the glitter, and I'm sure it is very special to them. So just wanted
Well,
to.
whenever you have work going on in your schools over a summer, it puts an incredible extra burden on our custodial staffs, and so they were able to get the schools ready in a lot less time this year. So anyway.
I think just one extra thing. I think we should add before and after pictures because we had all the pictures of those hallways before we made that change. So that just whenever we put out communication about this, so
Yes.
the
Yeah.
difference will be that much more visible.
Right. I forgot to mention that when we figure out in October the Phase D or next summer, we will put out a district communication, update the website just with here's what we've accomplished so far in this project. Here's what's happening next summer officially, all the decisions are made, and here's why. Because I think sometimes, questions get thrown out just in terms of we had the hot start to the school year, and it's well, why didn't we put all of our money into air conditioning? And that's a valid question, but there are so many other sort of upkeep things that we have to do. And I know, speaking of something that's not maybe the most exciting, like a parking lot isn't the most exciting thing in the world, but it is something that you have to tend to. And so it's all part that, and our hallways and unit ventilators and boilers and things like that have to keep being fixed as well. So we'll put out a communication about sort of current state, what we've accomplished, what we're planning on doing. We'll do that in October. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Board comments and committee reports. Semra?
I'll just say that at Southport, feels like we're off to a really good year, and it's been a pleasure to see Kelly in the hallways, and my girls have made it a point to point her out and say, "Oh, that's our new principal. She's really nice." So I'll just say that we're off to a really good start there.
Thank you.
That's it.
Kristen?
No comment.
Eunice?
Thank you. We did have a policy meeting recently on the 11th, and there are several policies on the agenda tonight. So I don't really have an update. I just wanted to point that out. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. I actually was going to ask you and members of the policy committee and the PRAL committee about maybe adding a meeting.
Okay.
I'll just wait till my board comments.
Sure. All right. Thanks.
Alina?
No comment.
Eric?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, going back to the class sizes, I think those class sizes are amazing at the elementary level, so that's a really great work by the previous board and with the administration, so hats off. I just also wanted to mention, I know there was some comments about the Columbus Day Committee, and I just want to state that I found the feedback from that committee something that I think was needed, especially by myself being a new member. And sometimes when you have committees, you don't always get consensus. It's not always a bad thing. You can still learn from that. So I know it's going to take, it took a little bit longer to maybe get where we wanted to be, but I did appreciate the feedback from that committee. Finally, I happen to still get emails from Rombout, and I happen, yes, Brian, I do. And I happen to see an email about the clubs in Mike's email. It's amazing, the clubs that you have running. I think it's great. I like how it's so organized. It mentions the specific dates, who the advisor is, how many times they meet. So I just wanted to mention, I think that's a really nice thing for not only the students, but also for the parents as well. So hats off.
Thank you. Anthony?
No comments.
Laura?
As a South Avenue parent and as a Rombout parent, I want to just echo what both of you said. Like, great job on both sides. That's it.
Thank you. And I had a couple of things. We have some kind of, we have to change our facilities in our audit committee meetings, so we aren't going to have the facilities meeting on the 27th as we had thought, which gives us a kind of a big break before our next committee meetings. And we do have some of our policies that we're looking at, I think, are going to take several meetings. So I was curious if our policy committee would be willing to meet before our next scheduled meeting, which was not until November 13th. Also, we usually meet our PR committee at the same night, and we have been made aware of this possible rezoning by the city, and I think this is a really interesting thing, and I feel like if we could possibly be, if we could submit our comments about it, I think, it'd be really interesting if we could just, I think my two comments would be, one, that we really want to make it as sort of walking friendly as possible, so that if we have students in that area, they can get to the schools by bike or by walking if they want to. And also, we did have a big disagreement over Edgewater as to how the per pupil count is made, and if we could agree on that before anything is built or we get to that point, I think that would make that process a lot easier. Yeah. So if the board is in agreement with that, I was hoping that the PR committee could maybe work on a letter around that.
Good.
To communicate with us. So I haven't watched the meeting yet, so I actually don't know exactly what their timing is, but everyone keeps saying fast track, so I assume pretty quick. So I'm wondering if people could meet either on, let's see, October 3rd would work, or October 10th would also.
I'm gone The 3rd through the 10th.
Okay. Well, we were supposed to meet on the 27th for facilities. What about the 27th?
That would be perfect.
Yeah? Does that work for?
Of what, September?
Of September, yeah. It's a Wednesday.
Oh, I thought facilities was 25th, no? Or that got moved?
Got changed.
That's
It
the
did?
October.
It did because we don't have school on the,
Oh, that's right, I missed that, sorry.
sorry.
Okay.
Which one are we changing to, we're putting,
So facilities is canceled for the 27th, correct?
Why
Yeah.
was that canceled?
It's canceled because we won't have the bids yet.
the bids they needed a larger window. The contractors needed more time to assess some work that was a little more complicated, so we extended it. So I want to say bids are now going to be reviewed on October 5th.
So should we try to meet on the 5th?
I think we would need a couple of days,
Okay.
probably.
All right, well, let's finish with the policy and PR first. So the 27th works for all policy and PR committee members?
That's the PR, right? That's the one I'm on?
Yeah.
Not for me,
Not for you? Okay.
but I can miss it. It's okay.
Would you be okay if we, okay, so I'm gonna, let's do that.
So the 27th is now policy and,
Yes.
Okay.
And we could meet, we could do it 6 and 7. Does that work for people? Is that okay? A little earlier? Okay,
Since I messed these dates up,
yes.
audit, did that get moved? Where-
Audit, so we had canceled audit in order to have this longer facilities
Correct, that's
meeting.
right.
And the audit, Anne Marie's not here tonight, but audit, we need to schedule that with our
Okay.
auditors.
Okay, so it's not
We
anything.
don't currently have an audit committee meeting, despite my best efforts to have this all.
I can get a better timeline about facilities tomorrow. I
Let's-
can email people.
Yeah.
That would be great.
That would be good, and also with audit, I know there's supposed to be a response to the internal, and that was gonna be worked on, and we were supposed to be reviewing it. I just wanna make sure we're in compliance with
Right.
that, so if there's anything that can be done
Right.
via
Okay.
email ahead of
Yeah.
us meeting, that would be great.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about when to schedule the audit and the facilities through email. But
Okay.
currently, we have this policy crawl meeting on the 27th.
Great. What time is the policy meeting? Are we doing, I know you
oh,
said 6 or 7, should we?
Uh,
I don't know what time
which
works for.
normally we do prawl first,
Yeah.
so is that okay? So we'll do prawl at 6 and
Sounds
policy
good.
at 7?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to let everyone know that I plan to put the board goals on our next agenda for review. Moving on, we have 2 items in old business. Our first item is the board seat vacancy. We have kind of discussed this over several meetings at this point, so I personally don't feel like there's much more to say. Does anyone have any comments that they want to make about it? Or questions? So what we would vote on tonight is whether or not to move forward. And at that point, if we do decide to move forward, we will try to figure out the process very quickly so that
Okay.
we could get it going. So can I have a motion? Does anyone have a motion that they would like to make?
I'd like to make a motion to add an item to the agenda to vote on whether or not we should add a person to the vacant seat.
Is there a second?
Second,
Comments or questions? So this is just adding an item, adding the item to vote on. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Opposed? I'm also in favor. Passes 8-0. So can I have a motion to can you say it how you said it?
I said to have a vote on to whether or not to fill the vacant seat by the board.
So I guess I'm not going to say whether or not. I guess I'll say whether to so that we know.
Who's in favor of
Yes.
filling the vacancy or not?
Can I have a motion to
Vote on filling.
vote on moving forward on filling the board vacancy?
So moved.
Second.
Comments or questions? Everyone understands, so that if we're voting on whether to move forward. All in favor?
Hold on, I just have a comment and question. So I do know that since discussion, there has been someone that has been regularly emailing the board inquiring about it. So
There were 2 people that inquired, yes.
I said regularly. The one person was just one time.
Yes, she said she would wait until the process was.
Yeah, no, I was just saying.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed. So I'm just going to do a roll call so we're sure.
Aye.
Opposed.
Opposed.
Opposed? Opposed.
Aye.
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 And this is where we get stuck.
Always have 4 to 4.
4 to 4. Okay, so in case of a tie, what we do is we discuss it more, and then we vote again. I just want to, did you get those votes, Vicky?
No, if you just let me do the roll call,
Okay,
that would probably be easier.
okay, sorry.
Okay, so Summer said yes?
No.
No.
No. Okay. Kristen Flynn said no. Eunice?
Yes.
Elena?
Yes.
Mr. Shetter?
Yes.
Anthony White?
Yes.
Ms. Stadler?
No.
No.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. So I think maybe to try to organize this discussion, if it's okay with you guys, I'll just sort of go through and you can talk about your reasons why you made your vote, and we can start there. Eric, do you want to start?
Yes. I actually was kind of in the middle on this until Alina brought up the idea of having the possible new person get signatures, which I, modified like 25 or so in a month's time, which I think kind of is like the process that the normal process would be in April and May. And I think that's what kind of swung me towards the aye vote.
Eunice?
It's actually the same exact reason.
Well,
Because I do feel like if they, this has been discussed before, if they were able to, get some of those signatures, I feel like that is a significant part of, doing this, just even going out there and speaking to people. So, yes, I feel the same way. I think that this is why I kind of want to, yes, make this decision about, what we're doing moving forward.
I feel like yes to the signatures, but if people are interested, then we should kind of like move on and fill the vacancy because there's interest out there, which is why I went with I to fill the seat. I know in due time it's like right around the corner, but the seat's there. There's interest. It's nice to have interest in wanting to be a part of the board. So let's not turn and say, "Oh, you're gonna have to wait a little bit."
Anthony?
I would like to hear from some no's first.
Okay. I think having gone through the process before and not fully understanding like the implications of it, it was a real learning experience. And I think at the end of the day, like I'm more comfortable letting voters make that decision than for us to routinely keep doing this and to make that decision on voters' behalf. And I also think that because it's one person and we're so close to the next election, it just doesn't feel as urgent as it has in previous times, which is why I'm a no.
Having been appointed and gone through that process with other people, and one of the rationale being there's interest, we should always honor interest. It did not generate anybody who applied and did not get appointed to stand for election. I think the process is time-consuming. Again, not something that feels great for us to make. It doesn't build interest in the board. I think that anybody who is genuinely interested can continue to come to meetings and like they're not maybe voting a part of the board, but you can really participate and understand the process and see if you can make the meeting, see if you can be interested in the work, see if, and then go through the process and get signatures and stand for election, which feels much more democratic than us appointing. And we have 8 people. I mean, this tie notwithstanding, it's, when you pick somebody, because now there are two people who've shown interest, that means we will be picking one, and that means one will not get picked. And it does, in my experience, does not make that person then really interested in running for election. We never saw those people come back again. Our seats are not super full most of these meetings, so it's just as important to be a witness to meetings as it is to be on the board, and you get a much better understanding if you are interested in the work and you want to do it if you attend meetings.
I think you've covered the reasons that I voted no. It does give me pause, though, to have people that are interested right now. I'll say that.
Do you think they won't be interested in the spring?
I assume they would, and it's so soon that is why I ultimately did not vote as a yes. But I do think it's within a few months away. It doesn't seem like a good use of our time as a board to do that and then do it again. And I think we can just let the democratic process run its course. That's my opinion.
I feel like the vote was 4-4. We cannot foresee what other votes will have to come up where it may be a 4-4 vote, and then it might stifle the business of the district if it's a 4-4 because the board can't come to consensus. I think it was purposeful to be a 9-member or 7-member or 5-member board. When it's even, this could happen where it's a 4-4 vote, and then it's just delaying the process as to coming to a resolution. The other part is that I remember in the past when we had conversations about appointing a person, we were concerned about the community's voice being heard, and that if we don't fill a seat, are we not allowing a constituent group voice not be heard? I don't know what constituents the two people have or would represent. However, I do feel that if there's people interested, why not go forth and go with it?
And what makes the community's voice more important this time than the last time when you voted against it?
I thought it was too polarized last time.
I think that we risk polarization just as much this time, honestly. And my reasons are very similar to everyone else. I think that the first time we agreed on an appointment, we had 2 openings, which is, a big difference from one, in my opinion, in terms of just making quorum and keeping the business of the board going. The second time, we started with 1, but quickly went to 2 openings again, and we were in the middle of a pandemic. So both were crises in their own way. They were different, but they both felt very urgent at that point. And I really appreciate the 2 community members that have stepped forward and offered themselves. I would definitely prefer not to choose between them. I respect them both for wanting to. I don't know anything about their experience or their values at this point, but just stepping forward is really a brave thing to do, a courageous thing to do. So I certainly respect that. But yeah, having been through it, I definitely would only do it in what felt like an emergency. I think that in terms of the tie tonight, that is ironic. I do recognize that. But we are all adults here, and I think that we can have a conversation, and I think that a robust conversation is really important. It's important for us to practice it in our roles as leaders. So, are there any other comments, or should we take them?
I don't think we could vote again tonight.
Really? Vicki?
You can only vote on if it doesn't pass,
Should
you
we
can
hear
only
from the
vote one
clerk?
time,
Do
I
they know
believe.
better? Or
I've heard of the people voting until it just breaks.
Yeah, I'm
I
pretty
thought
sure
if a motion was added to the agenda to be voted on and it failed,
it didn't
then you
fail.
cannot-
It was a tie. So a tie.
yeah, but it didn't approve, so it didn't.
But do you know the rule, Vicki?
I can Google it quickly. I'm pretty sure, I did look this up at one point. I'm pretty sure that you take it to.
I'd be happy to, I'm just saying I didn't think that you could.
Well, just while we're looking, I'll add one comment, which is for people who haven't picked somebody before,
Yeah.
you have to look at the other people who you're proud of for stepping up, and you have to say, not you. And
But
it's,
that's life in a sense that, yes, but that's going back to that's why we're here, right? Like as leaders to be able to sit down and make that decision. I'm not saying that it'll feel great, it won't feel great, or, and no, I can't say I've been in that position as a board, but I've been in that position when I'm hiring someone. Like at some point, someone has to be told, unfortunately, not this go around, and the fact that there is another opportunity for the position for the board seat to be open again. And I know you said in the past, when there is interest or we're appointing, then that same individuals won't then go out, and that's on them. Like
well,
that's.
I think it's hard to work with people who didn't think they could work with you, but I don't know, I can't speak to their state of mind, but I think a volunteer position is different than a job in some ways. And
Well,
I
in an
also,
elected position.
an elected position, and also I think that,
That was just the example that
yeah, no, I agree with you.
No.
Like, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not like looking for some, I'm just, this is really just experience of
Yeah.
this talking. And I feel like, you say not you, but we then had just had an election where none of us ran opposed.
Yeah.
So it was like, there would have been an opportunity to come out and to run against somebody. And that's, that's the democratic process. But nobody did that. Now this position opened up, and now we have to pick. It feels like this is something that really, in my experience, is always better in the hands of the voters.
So I'm finding both answers.
Could we just make a decision? And if we keep voting,
I'll wait.
just do it, you know, I mean, just
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, Vicki, you've.
just makes sense to me to keep doing it, but I don't
I
know.
had it in my head that was what you did, that if there was a tie,
I did
you
too.
brought it back to discussion and voted again. I mean, at some point, someone could motion to table it because
Right.
it's like midnight or whatever, but, so is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so, do we make a new motion then? If it's a tie, are we considering it a failed motion?
Is it a failed motion, Vicki, or is it just a?
It's just a tie.
I've seen just like a revote.
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna do a revote. Thank you.
Okay, so right now you're voting on to approve or not approve filling the vacant seat.
Yes, do you want to just do a roll call?
Yeah. Ms. Harrison?
I'm gonna vote yes.
Ms. Flynn?
No.
Ms. Heath?
Now we're gonna go back.
Did you just change?
Well, I've been on the fence about this from the very beginning. I'm feeling like everybody wanted to have another member on here now, so this is what I'm going with. But I'm gonna stick with. I've never wanted to choose someone. I think they need to be voted on, just as I was, elected. They should be elected. So I'm gonna say no.
No?
Yes, even if this means we're gonna fight it out, people.
I respect that. I respect that you're
Sorry, I'm
just
the complicated one.
listening.
Yes.
Mr. Shetter?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Ms. Sadler?
No.
Ms. Taylor?
No.
4-4.
So
More, that I think this is a great conversation. I think it's really, I mean, it's important, this is,
Yeah. I was on the fence, as I mentioned initially, because of the interest. It felt like, having not been through the process.
Well, can we talk about that?
Yeah.
The interest thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So are we saying the concern is that in, 6 months from now, right? That the interest will just be gone?
No, I hope not. But I think if someone is saying, I'm really interested right now, and it's a possibility, why won't you consider me?
Well, if they would, in theory, they would still be serving
Right.
next year. I mean, they would
Yeah.
commit for the long haul, then you can wait a few months. You know?
I also agree with that.
Yeah, I think the interest is something that if you're interested, you are just interested and you come to meetings and you really pay attention and I attended meetings for a full year before that vacancy, before 2 vacancies arose. And I understood. I felt like, well, I'll tell you, like, I felt like I deserved it. Like, when I got it, I was like, yes, I should be appointed. So should this other person who showed up to every meeting for a year. But then right after, and you see people upset, and you see people disappointed, and you see them not return, then you really wonder, like, should I have been the person? Was I a good pick? Was this right? And it's not so much about, like, look, I've had a life of disappointment at times, so I'm not like thinking that you can't be a grown-up and be disappointed. Like, if you're going for something, you get disappointed. So it's not about not being a grown-up. It's just that what strengthens the process, what makes it work, what makes people sort of stick with it. And, the layer of adding signatures is kind of making people go out and generate interest and basically, like, mimic some of the process. So that, I think it's an improvement for sure. And I'm not, like, I'll say, like, I'm not this, like, if it passed, fine, I'll go through the process. It is time consuming. It does, like, feel weird. It is a whole thing. It does eat up time. So, I do it. Like, I'm here. I do it. Would I rather be moving the ball forward on other things? For sure. But if other people felt strongly about it, I would be just as active and a participant as anybody else and as enthusiastic. And I'm not going to walk out of here, like, mad or anything at anybody. I just know what I know, which was it's not great. It doesn't feel good. And the last time it got totally wonky for all these, like, reasons that had to do with not being able to choose between one person really not wanting to choose between 2 candidates. And so they just, they left. And then it was very hard on the board to recover from that.
I agree. I completely agree. And I also feel I have a hard time in my mind justifying to potential voters, like, this is why I decided that I should choose and not you. Like, I can't find the reason. And I don't want it to be a regular practice of the board to appoint and appoint and appoint somebody who should be voted in.
So then does that mean we're gonna change the policy or write some procedure down or something?
I mean, this is state law, so these are always our options if we have a vacancy for the board that's before, not around election time. So we don't have anytime that this came up, we would be presented with the same choices. I think what we can do is improve the process, which I think your suggestion already does 100%, so that, if there was a time when I would vote for that process, I would definitely want to have added that in. Because I think that does really make it more, just in terms of getting community buy-in and things like that. I think it's just an important exercise for a board member to have to do.
I had one question about that. People can sign multiple petitions, right?
I mean, they can for
That's
the
what I wanted to
regular.
make sure for this.
Yeah. So I assume we would apply the same rules for this.
Yeah.
And the adding of the signature was one personal, because I feel like I had to do it and it was tough, but it was also, like, eye-opening and a good practice. But 2, it's okay, by having the petitions, the second part of it is because there's no one voting it in, it's like you still have to go out. So it's not like a person just sat here and said, I want to do it, and we're like, yes. It's still the option, there's still the part of going around and getting people's signatures. So although there would be no voting in and taking away the vote from the people, we kind of made like we're acknowledging that we don't want to take the vote from the people, but so an alternative would be, let's do the signatures. So that was kind of also where, for me, the signatures came in as well. So I wouldn't have no one feel as though, like, well, we didn't get a chance to vote. And granted, that one person could be the one person that didn't sign the paper either, right? The signature paper too, but at least that person went around and kind of got the signatures.
Is this position on the ballot in May?
Yes. This is.
So they'd still,
that's been,
right, so
Don Galloway's last last year.
Right, so this is John's last year. So so the person would still need to run again.
In any case, even if
always
this
do.
weren't, that.
Okay, so,
They always
but I
have
mean,
to.
this
They would
position
then-
specifically, like, he's just
Filling
filling
in
John's
for-
position
until-
for those 6
Whoever-
months.
Whoever gets the least number of votes at the next election would get appointed on that night.
Okay.
And have an extra 6 weeks or
Right.
whatever until reorg. But
Right.
yes, essentially, it's the same, they would be getting a 3-year term just like anybody else.
Yeah, so I just, like, people are saying, I just don't see it taking away from the electors. We're just putting someone in to fill out this 6-month span, and then the electors will then have their their right to vote again on that person. That's that was my thinking on it. Like I'm not, see, we're not, I could see if this was like a 2.5-year position or however it was, but this person is just filling out, and then the vote will happen again. That was just my thinking.
And I think that's like the logical way to look at it. I think the experiential way to look at it is it casts a chill when you pick somebody. And that, yes, they could pick up their pieces and run again, and they could run against whoever was selected. But history has proven people do not. So somebody might show an interest and want to be appointed, because we're talking about, we'll
Right.
appoint him, whoever he is, and he will be serving out this term. But if there are more than one person, there's more
Right.
than one person, then we'll be picking the person. And then, just democratic politics and politics in
Right.
general, democracy tends to favor incumbency. So if somebody's in the seat, it's a seat that somebody you have to knock out then, basically. And so that's something where it's like, and also I do think we haven't seen people who have not been selected in an appointment process then pick up a petition and run, historically. And we've had multiple people interested in the seat.
But again, going back to the times you made these decisions, which were 3 or 4 years ago, was much different than, let's say, it is right now. Maybe that person or persons would want to run again. I don't think we can just state that just because it happened 4 years ago that it's going to happen now. It could. You're
Having
basing it on what happened.
Having been through two, yeah.
Right.
You can
Yes.
almost start to see a pattern.
But
I think.
in crisis though, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's
But I've been through
identified.
4. And 2, they
Through 4 appointment process.
Kristen and Craig.
Well, we meant 2 cycles.
Correct.
I've been through that one with you. I was on the other side.
Right.
And we went through the next one, which was 2 seats. So we're talking not
There's
numbers of
one
seats.
seat and then another seat.
Yeah, we're talking about
For the first appointment process, but against the second appointment process, and now you're
For
for
this
for
one.
the third,
Correct.
just for consistency, okay.
Correct.
I'm sorry, go on.
No, it's okay.
So, I feel like we are, everyone's making their points. I think there's some very good points made here. I think the only thing I want to add to it is that we have 2 interested parties right now. And it's true, if you pick one, you don't necessarily get the other one running, but maybe they both would run in May. That's the thing. And for me, the question is, can the board continue with its business right now as an 8-member board? I think that's also part of the fundamental question.
Are we going to meet a lot of deadlocks like this, though, if we don't have another person?
You don't know.
That is, that is a possibility.
You can have a deadlock if somebody abstains, too.
Right.
Yes, you absolutely can, or if someone doesn't come to the meeting,
Yeah.
or 2
Yeah.
people,
You still need 5 for
Right.
the pass.
most of our votes are unanimous. I do want
Yeah.
to point that out. We have another controversial vote right after this one. Who knows how that's going to go? But in general, I think this board works very smoothly, and I don't see, looking ahead, we have our RFP for legal counsel that we'll be looking at. I did want to see if the board wants to discuss reducing the size of the board. I can't, if anyone else is thinking of, kind of like big conversations that we would have in the next 6 months, please name them. I think the rest is sort of like keeping things moving as we have. And having been on this board now as long as I have been, I feel like we are we have done a lot of work to make the board run smoothly. So that is something that is working about this board. I don't think adding another person would hurt that at all, obviously. But I'm just saying that, if we were a mess and constantly getting tied votes, that would definitely, if we had that historically going on, then that would be a consideration. It's not really a consideration for me tonight because it doesn't seem to be coming up very often.
Can I just clarify that if I have not been through the appointment process, so I imagine that it is a difficult thing. As I said before, I don't necessarily want to be choosing one person over the other. I definitely think the public should do that. But we don't even know what, you mentioned that it's time consuming. So even in doing an appointment process, it would take us some time. So there's, added energy from the board on this one topic. And that person would still need to go through signatures if that's the process that would be decided on. And in a few months, they're going to have to do the same thing if they decide to run, which that energy may not be there. So it's just something that I feel like.
Well, working backwards too, then, if we talk about a realistic timeline. And again, like, I voted against this, but I'm not opposed to the idea. Again, if we do it and someone joins the board, I'm happy to work with them. It's not being against that. But just in terms of the timing, how long, since we've added this element of the signatures, how long typically is the signature period for a petition?
I usually get petitions, I give them out in April, and they're,
30 days? Okay. So would we want to reduce the window of time? We're asking them to get how many signatures?
I think
Yeah.
we would want to reduce it just to get it going if we were doing it.
That wasn't even discussed because we were supposed to decide if there was going to be an appointment process before.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We haven't
I
even
think that
really
we-
discussed that, which is fine.
It's harder, like, if, just like in terms of, thinking about the time consumption and when this person would join, it's realistic to have like an actual discussion about how, just like ballpark, what we're looking at. So if you usually do like about a month to 6 weeks. Is that fair?
it's 30 days,
Okay.
because then it's pick the order of the ballot. So it's different when it's an actual election versus you guys just want to
Right.
get people to show interest and here are my signatures.
Okay. And how many signatures are we getting?
I get 100.
Right.
You get 100
That's
signatures.
the state.
So we
We
would
thought,
want it to be
I think we
100?
thought 25. I think that's what was one of the thoughts.
Is that what we thought? 25?
I think that was the number thrown out. I thought that was a good one, but we could modify that.
Seems like a reasonable
Okay,
time.
so 2 weeks does seem reasonable. So let's say we voted to we vote to move forward with the process. Do we determine the process at this meeting, or do we determine the process at the next meeting?
Well, if
I'm
we
just,
could
like, I really am just
determine
thinking about
the
timing.
process at this meeting, we would, because part of that is disseminating the, because we're not going to just rely on the two people that have contacted us. We owe to the public to
Right.
broadcast this opening and that we're going through it. So we would have to give time for that, to broadcast that.
So what would be a reasonable period of time, do we think? Like,
Maybe 2
I
weeks
mean,
to
if it's going in the
broadcast, 2 weeks to
paper.
get votes, or?
okay, so 2 weeks.
So
All right, let's say this, for argument's sake, it goes from this meeting, which is, what date is it?
The 18.
Right, okay. So let's say we did 2 weeks to just broadcast. When's the next meeting?
October 2nd.
October 2nd.
Okay. So we did 2 weeks to get signatures. Or 2 weeks to broadcast it and see how much interest there
The
is
second, 2 weeks for signatures would be the 16th.
of October.
So the
And that,
16th.
so I do want to say though, like, getting signatures, so broadcast, we should have them open the petition for a week at least, I think,
So then,
so that they can actually, people can come and pick it up and.
You couldn't open it once you broadcast it?
Okay.
Sure.
Then that gives
So
them
it'd be
4 weeks in
concurrent?
a sense,
4 weeks total. Okay, so then that would bring us to,
the 16th.
The 16th. So we would interview candidates on the 16th
okay.
and make a decision.
do we make a decision the same day? Or do we?
Yeah, is that what happens?
Not, I would rather not make a decision the same day if,
So
But
it'd
it
be
happens that
November the
quickly?
We did, like in my process, I think it was, I think it was public, No, it was, I can tell you it was dates.
No, you
Well-
you spoke,
Oh, that you speak, that people, then
board
we
went
also,
in exec.
we had written statements.
right?
We spoke. I think we were interviewed.
We did, the board was able to ask
Ask
questions. of the
questions.
candidates In public.
There were,
But then we went in exec and then we came back out and appointed.
no, definitely not.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't, I know, because it was a stretch of time before, I think it was the next meeting. I think you went into you didn't appoint that night.
I don't remember, but I will say that I would prefer.
I was appointed, I remember,
Till the
we,
next
I
meeting?
could, I was trying to get you guys
November
to tell me.
20.
You wouldn't tell me,
Preferred a lot
so
of
I know.
We
So
can
wait
wait
I
till
would
the next meeting.
prefer after interviewing, meeting the candidates to vote on it at the next meeting,
So the
not the
6th,
same meeting.
November the
So November
6th.
the 20th.
The
The
6th, right?
The 6th.
No, I thought the 6th was the interview.
No.
The 16th.
16th, the interview.
6th is the
16th is the
interview.
And then the next
then-
meeting is the 6th.
So the 6th, so they get a month to do so you're saying
If
broadcast.
We did it concurrently. We did like broadcast. You can start picking up petitions the minute it's
Yes.
broadcast.
Yeah.
But then working from the last, like you should have a closing date for petitions, like
That's
we
what I
should-
mean. So if
yeah.
you have a closing date, the closing date says the 13th of October, then you're saying that on that Monday, the 16th, they would come in and interview.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And then, and so then on the
November 6th.
6th, we would vote on it.
Gotcha.
Right.
So if we agreed on the, if
Right,
it
right,
passes and if we
Right.
agree on the process.
Right.
That would be the timeline. So then they're being sworn in on the 6th.
So they would be sworn in by that time.
November, so then they'd be on
November 20th.
November, December, January, February, March, April.
Before they have to decide if they're gonna do it again. 5 months.
But they would stay till June, though.
May.
Would, yes.
They
No,
would
they
be
would
there
stay,
till
they would
the.
stay till
Whoever-
the July to
so
the reorg.
Whoever
right?
got the
No,
least
it's
number of
whoever
votes.
gets the highest
at-
votes gets 3 years to.
When do we
3
vote? I'm
3
sorry.
months.
May.
I thought, is it the
years since
highest
May.
number of votes or the?
Highest number of votes because you're getting the 6.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, of course.
Right.
So it's the 3 years, 6 weeks.
Right,
Six
so,
more weeks
so
of
that
service.
And the
person
lowest
does not
amount gets the-
necessarily
I didn't realize that.
continue till June.
When do we
Their
vote?
term may end on election day.
Right,
Uh,
June 3rd.
I don't, it's May.
No, there's a month. I don't.
There will be different.
Oh, okay.
There will be different scenarios. The highest vote getter will get the 3-year, 6-week term.
Right, so
And
there's a,
then if that's an incumbent, that person has to resign, take the oath then, because they got the longest one. If the new person was, if the person, like, say it was open and it was just the highest vote getter and it was a non-incumbent, they get the 3-year, 6 weeks.
right, so they may have to briefly resign if they, assuming they run again, they may have to briefly resign and then
It's
be
already
sworn in again.
complicated.
So the 6 weeks is that
They would
May
lose
to
their
the end of
executive
June. That's that extra 6 weeks.
Yeah, for that,
That's what I was
you know,
thinking.
if that happens.
And in this time, like depending on how many candidates we get, so like we're thinking, like we have 2 people of interest, but once we broadcast it, and I do think people show more interest because they don't have to run. So they're like, they think it's easier and it's not, like it's not easier. It's definitely, having to do it, if we stick with the
Sounds
process.
harder to me.
If you do a public, you
Definitely.
have to make a public statement, like you get peppered with questions, if we're doing the same thing. And,
Okay.
I know I was shaking in my shoes during that. And we used to do Meet the Candidates night. We
Well,
had
if
that
there's
during
a
the elections,
contested
but we don't do that.
election, we would do a meet the candidates.
Yeah.
But we haven't had a contested election in a while. So are we ready for a revote?
I feel bad because it's my fault.
No.
I feel bad.
No.
Ms. Heath,
No.
Ms. Cush,
Yes.
Mr. Shetter,
Yes.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Ms. Stadler,
No.
Ms. Huer,
No,
fails.
thank you. I want to thank this board for that discussion. I think it was really important, and I appreciate everyone's input.
And I did email the attorney and we could have kept on voting.
Okay, yeah, I'm just pretty sure that was the way. Thank you. Okay, so item number 2 in
Another
old
fun one.
business is. So we are not, yes, so we are not moving forward with the appointment for the vacancy. It will be, obviously, if another board member resigns in that time, we would bring this up again before the next election. But for now, we will keep it open until the next election.
And we hope everybody who's interested stays interested.
Absolutely, and I will reach out to both people that were expressed interest and talk to them about the role of a board member in general, and hopefully they'll keep their interest. We will have at least one, uncontested seat, if that, because I know sometimes people don't like to run against other people, so there will be an uncontested seat on the ballot. Okay, so the next discussion is the holiday name change. And Eric, I really appreciate your comments about the committee. I think that I was disappointed that it ended in a deadlock, but I really am grateful to the community members that participated, and I know that it's a really hard thing to talk about. And so I'm not, while I'm disappointed, I'm also not surprised. Does anyone have any comments that they would like to share about the holiday name change?
Is there a
This is currently,
choice?
well,
Do we have an array of choices that we're,
I mean,
I
someone
know there
did
are choices,
suggest
obviously.
Smelly Sock Day in the emails on the table. But no, really, it would be up to a board member to make a motion that they would
Okay.
like to make the change. So
To make the change from.
from the current.
from this
okay.
to something
Yeah.
else?
Yeah, we don't need to vote to keep it
Oh, okay.
Columbus Day, because it is Columbus Day. I did want to just remind everyone that this is purely a change on the district calendar. It does not rise above that. Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to change Columbus Day to Indigenous People / Italian American Heritage Day.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any comments or questions?
I think in reading I am also grateful to the committee, and I know it's not easy to do that, and I understand, I appreciate Eric saying that. All due respect, Dennis, it's always great to hear from you. I think that, I don't think we had to be given, it would have been great to be given an answer, but I don't think that's as important as driving people within a community to talk to each other and to listen to each other. I think that in listening to a lot of the comments, I understand the attachment to the name Columbus, but at the heart of the argument was about people who were immigrants from a certain country that felt quite discriminated against and have made significant contributions to America and feel that they deserve that to be celebrated. I'm not of the mind that, especially given the fact that that represents a significant portion of the population that has lived in Beacon for a long time and continues to live here, I'm not of the mind that we should take that pride away in any way. Also, given the acknowledgement that since most of us came here from someplace else, America was not discovered, it was taken from people who were living here before most of us came. So it would be disingenuous to say that we should be celebrating the beginning of that process for them. And we need to acknowledge that it was and continues to be theirs as well. So I think this is a compromise, which makes everybody a little bit unhappy, I'm sure. But I can live with it, and I hope other people can too.
Are there any other comments?
Yeah, I would like to say I appreciate the committee's feedback as well. I thought it was useful. I think that if we're going to change it, I would like to change all the holidays on the district calendar to holidays and not name it. So then it's up to the parents to have a conversation as to why we're off. So if it's a district calendar, it would just say holiday or winter break, and we don't have to name everything. We could just say it's a break because we're off from school. So if we're going to change one that's not required to be changed, I would like to change all of them to just a holiday and or break. Spring break, winter break. If we're off in January, it's a holiday. If we're off in November, it's a holiday. So then it's taking all the names off, so it's just saying holiday then for the district.
Are you making a motion to amend?
I would like to amend the motion to say that if we're, what was your motion, original motion?
My motion was to change the Columbus Day holiday to Indigenous people. It was basically the New York City version, which is Indigenous People / Italian American Heritage Day.
I would like to amend and add that if we, to change the name to not name holidays on the district school calendar, to just call it a holiday or break. for-
Aren't those
for
two
the whole.
totally different votes, though?
I'm amending hers to say that it's, she wants to change it to Columbus Indigenous People to change it to holiday.
So you're not trying to change all of the holiday names in this motion, you're just.
I'm saying if we're going to change one, I'd like to change them all to say that it's just holiday for, on the whole district calendar, so we don't name any holiday, we just say holiday. So we don't give it a specific name.
I don't know what we're voting on then. Just that? Are we voting on that motion?
I don't know if
Is there a
anybody else has.
second?
I'm just really unclear on how how it's possible to vote to change the name of the holiday, but then also take away all the names of the holidays. Like, it just seems like two separate things. Am I not-
Well, it's a motion, and so I think that it is a big, to me, that does feel like a giant other conversation.
Yeah.
So, but I guess we would foresee if there's
I
a
mean, if we didn't have a committee to change the names of all the holidays, then we wouldn't be following process. We specifically voted on a committee about this holiday, so I thought we were just voting on this holiday.
And I'm saying if we agree to change the name on this holiday, I would like to change the names on the whole district calendar to non-specific names and just call it a holiday or break. So you could vote on yours. The amendment was to adjust it to name it, instead of Columbus Day Indigenous People, to name it holiday.
So we never voted on the motion.
Right,
We never voted on my motion, so there was no vote, like, do you
And
insert?
I'm amending your motion. So
So
you
he's-
vote on the
so then-
amendment first, and then you vote on your motion.
Okay, so, okay.
But is there a second for Anthony's amendment? Okay, so
Okay.
I'm hearing none. So, so we're back to Kristen's original motion, which is to change the name of the Columbus Day, current Columbus Day holiday to Indigenous Peoples' Day / Italian American Heritage Day.
Are we still in, we're still in discussion, right, on this?
We are, are there any other comments or questions?
So my feeling is, in the spirit of trying to compromise here, listening to the comments from the committee members and several that I appreciate, Meredith, you sending me the ones that you've received. I would think that we would like to try to keep, my suggestion would be to keep Columbus Day with Indigenous People Day. That's my feeling, is to keep the name. I think it's, I think this was in one of the writings. We are a much smaller community than New York City. We're not New York City. And I think that there is a contingency here in the city of Beacon that feels very strongly about this holiday. And I think that by sticking with Columbus Day, but then with the / in Indigenous People Day, I'd be more comfortable with that as a compromise. That's just
Are
my
you
feeling.
making a motion
Well,
to amend
I,
Kristen's?
I'd like to make a motion to amend Kristen's
So you would just be making a motion to amend her
amend
suggestion?
suggestion to Columbus Day, Indigenous People Day.
Is there a second for that amendment?
What was your original motion, Kristen?
It was to change the holiday to Indigenous Peoples' Day / Italian American Heritage Day.
And so Flora seconded your motion, your amended motion. So are there comments or questions about the suggestion of Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples' Day?
I think I understand the attachment to the name. I think just given the readings that I've done, I feel like it would be against the spirit of honoring the Indigenous people, the people who were really in favor of changing it to honor those folks, because they believe that that arrival is the beginning of colonization and genocide. So the attachment I was hearing from Italian American people who came and spoke was about celebrating their culture. I mean, we heard over and over again, we get one day. And, you know, I think if it were Fiorello LaGuardia Day, I might have a little bit more, I would be a little bit more open to that because of, I know we're not New York City, but that would be an Italian American who made
get it.
significant contributions to, you know, and really became a symbol for Italian Americans in the United States and rising up through government. I think that, you know, if it was something that really, if I'm hearing what the spirit of what they wanted, it was that they believed that this holiday represented their journey from oppression, an immigrant class that was oppressed within the United States and persecuted, to having a day. Now, if we back up fully, my research that I found was that Columbus Day was about Catholicism, and they chose Columbus because he wasn't a saint, and he was somebody that would not raise the hackles of the Protestant ruling class here, that people who were Catholic were going to be taking their orders from Rome. And it was really named after the Knights of Columbus, which was a very powerful aid organization within the Catholic community among laborers. And they picked Columbus specifically because he wasn't a saint. And I think over time it has become, because he originated from Italy, it became a symbol for people. If we're honoring the contribution of that group to the varied experience of the United States, and I don't want to diminish that in any way, I still want to recognize it. And I would hope that they would recognize that their contributions represent more than just one man and that are ongoing and continuing. As somebody who just ate chicken Milanese for dinner tonight, I can say that, you know, like there are various ways that this has entered our lives and we continue to benefit from those folks coming and contributing here. And so I feel very strongly that we should continue to honor that. I just think it shouldn't be linked to an individual.
I mean, part of my reason is I'm not a historian, and I feel like it hasn't been changed at the national level, and they would put committees together and do this. Are we going to start making other changes at the local level because it becomes a hot topic in the community or something? So that's part of the reason why I feel, you know, it hasn't been changed at the national level, so why are we looking at it here? We brought it up because there was a community member that brought it to public comment. And then, you know, then we reached out to get information from our community to see, and it was really a 50-50 divide. And then we put a committee together, and it was a 50-50 divide. And so, like, I'm not a historian. I have beliefs from my perspectives from when I grew up and from the way I was taught history. And so I don't feel I'm able to make a decision as to what should be, what's right and wrong. I'm not there. That's why I was saying about keep it simple if you make everything a holiday. But I just worry about the doors that we open up if we change one at a local level. What else don't we know about that could come up that we should be asked to be changed, and we're making changes, right? So now we're going to take that burden on as a board. You said during the board vacancy, you know, a good use of our time, right? I got on this board to ensure that kids get educated and to make sure that they're getting educated properly. I do not feel qualified to make a change, and so that's one of the reasons why I made it simple and just said, call it a holiday, you know? That the kids, they're up from school. That's what they see. So.
I think one of my interests in updating the name is that the way that we teach the history of this country has changed a lot since I was in elementary school, and I've seen the material that my kids got through the years, and it's different, and it's acknowledging the genocide of the indigenous people in this country, and acknowledging the damage that was done. And it's not a simple story, and I think that it's a really it's a hard story, but I think it's an important story to really acknowledge. And so that's why I am open to the change.
I'd also like to say, Anthony, you mentioned 50-50, everything's, and it's true, the committee itself came back with the same result. I believe Kristen is pretty much suggesting that we go 50-50 and, change the holiday name to, acknowledging both groups and, not one over the other, which is what we're trying to avoid here. And I feel like what the district really is working towards inclusion, and that would show that we are, standing strong behind that mission and, our values. So I just feel like your suggestion is like a pretty solid one, and I think one that we should really consider as a board.
But part of me feels that it's going to exclude as well, right? Because like the governor just passed the lunar holiday, an act that kids will be off for the lunar
New Year, yeah.
Lunar New Year. And it doesn't affect us this school year, but next year it will. There's going to be advocacy groups about why aren't we off for the Jewish holidays? Why aren't we off? And it's going to open,
Aren't we?
We do.
not all districts are. She said, she made it a state law that you have to be off when the Lunar New Year comes about. Some schools do go in during the Jewish holidays. It's not state mandated.
Okay.
So.
So that would
in
be an
Beacon-
argument for not following state or federal law, but rather what you decide on a local level.
Right, I don't know, what else are we missing, right? Are we missing some other group and so forth, like?
I think this was about, this holiday was specifically about acknowledging that that name for some people brings up harm.
Yeah.
And
I think that's
that-
a big part of it.
and that it's something that if the spirit of it has over time really been captured in a different way, then you don't lose the way that it was captured and you remove the harm by changing it.
When I went to the ISBA convention last year, there was a really powerful presentation by an Indigenous student from the Seneca School District, and they talked about advocating, because their funding is different from the rest, because they're on a
They're
reservation.
tribal?
Yeah, and they talked about going to DC and advocating for their funding to be more equitable. And one of the slides that this student showed was a picture standing in front of Statue of Columbus. And the student was visibly emotional and really felt like, this was something that she did not know if her people would ever be able to do, to stand up for themselves, to advocate for themselves. And it was so, for her to be able to stand in front of this statue that was so offensive to her was such a victory. It was so important. And I think for me, it was incredibly moving, because I don't have a lot of, we don't have a huge Indigenous community in Beacon, but we do have some. And really trying to understand their point of view it's really important, I think. And I think it's something that we don't necessarily take the time to do, because it's not in our regular experience. And in the way that you're saying that Italian culture is so infused in American culture that you really participated in some way every week without thinking about it.
And we teach Italian here.
We do teach Italian here.
Me personally, I will not be voting on it either way, because I am not qualified to make a decision. I feel like this to take it off the calendar, to add something else, because I don't know how I feel if someone made a decision to take something off that was very important to me and my culture and my background. I would want to know that, like, I'm not educated enough to make that decision. Like, I'm not. I learned a lot from the committee and the letters that came in that I did not know, because it wasn't taught when I was in school, about Columbus Day. My extent to my knowledge was that, I knew that he obviously didn't discover America, but that was the extent to the knowledge that we had, right? I understand that we're growing as a society as far as just really understanding more about our history, for the reason why we ended up with Juneteenth, which is national holiday. I didn't learn about Juneteenth until I watched it on a television show, and I was still in my 30s. So I personally, as long as I get the language right and you tell me what I'm supposed to say, I know I don't want to vote on something like this just because I don't. If someone was like, oh, well, Lena, why did you vote? I want to be able to then say I did it because X, Y, Z, and I can't. Like and that's just my growth. That's just me learning and understanding more about myself and more about society. And
But does that speak to, you had mentioned about taking the name off, right? That somebody might feel offended if you took the name off. Hence, my thinking of if we left it with Indigenous people, so we're recognizing both, at the same time recognizing, I think, the work of the committee. And, so to me, that kind of, going back to the word, kind of seemed to be the compromise, to me. That was just my thinking on it, trying to just, just,
that spoke to me too when you were saying what you were saying, but then at the same time I was like,
okay.
I'm gonna fall back on this
I just
one.
wanted,
No, I
just wanted to ask you.
appreciate it.
I think, Eric, I've thought a lot about that, and I've sort of gone back and forth in my head about it. And I read this interesting quote from Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Jackson yesterday. And she was giving a speech at the 60th anniversary of the bombing of the Springfield Baptist Church, and or the 16th Street Baptist Church, and she talked about moving forward and how difficult it is to acknowledge some of our history, but how important it is to move forward as a nation. But she also said that, she talked a lot about not forgetting these things and how important. And that is where I stumbled a little bit, because I feel like, well, if we change it, how do we remember, that we did this thing that doesn't totally make sense in my head, and how we have, our teaching of it has evolved. My thinking about it has evolved a lot over time. So, but I also really hear you, Kristen, that it is a name that, that does harm to people who are Indigenous, who have, continue to be directly impacted by something that happened so long ago.
I think it also does harm to people who are trying to reconcile our colonial past with ways that we, and the harm that was created either through colonization, genocide of Indigenous people, and slavery. And recognizing that you don't take away from things that people have contributed, but you have to move forward when you sort of reckon with the information and the harm that it's caused, and how you can be like broader and more inclusive without leaving someone behind. I'm comfortable leaving Christopher Columbus behind. We can acknowledge what he did, and he can stand on his own about his own history, and people can. I'm not a historian, but I can say that I'm what we're striving for. I would call myself a lifelong learner. When something doesn't make sense, I try to understand it. And my understanding of this is, I do not want to celebrate this man, but I do not want to erase the contributions or any of the experiences of a group of people that came here and strived to contribute and participate and fought in wars and, volunteered and helped build this country. But I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
So, does anyone else have any other comments? We have Eric's amended motion open. So, so that is for Columbus Day, to change it to Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. So we'll vote on his motion. If his motion passes, then that is the name. If it fails, we're back to Kristen's suggestion of Indigenous Peoples Day / Italian American Day. Heritage Day, thank you. Do you want to, are there any other comments before I have Vicki do the roll call? Okay.
Ms. Herson?
I'm sorry.
Voting on Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yay or nay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
No.
Oh, wait.
Oh, did you think it was the one that my motion?
I thought, I'm voting for,
Keeping the name Columbus Day?
No.
Okay, so
sorry,
I don't think she understood.
I didn't understand.
Okay.
Well, wait, it's Columbus Day / Indigenous People.
That's what we're voting for or against. I'm sorry, I thought.
That's what we're
Okay,
voting
so
for.
I'm
That's right.
against that.
Okay.
Okay, so no. Ms. Glenn?
No.
Ms. Heath?
No.
Ms. Cush?
Now, what am I saying when I
can
don't?
abstain.
Abstain, thank you.
Mr. Shenner?
Yes.
Mr. White?
No.
Ms. Stadler?
No.
Ms. Hewer?
No.
Pass.
Okay, so then we're back to Kristen's original motion, which is for Indigenous Peoples' Day / Italian American Heritage Day.
Ms. Urso?
Yes.
Ms. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Heath?
Yes. Yes.
Abstain.
Mr. Shenner?
No.
Mr. White?
No.
Ms. Stadler?
Yes.
Ms. Hewer?
Yes.
Passes.
I want to thank the board again for that discussion. Moving on to the consent agenda. The use of the consent agenda permits the Board of Education to make more effective use of its time by adopting a single motion to cover those relatively routine matters which are included. Any member of the board who wishes to discuss individually a particular piece of business on the consent agenda may so indicate, and that item will be considered and voted on separately, thus preserving the right of all board members to be heard on any issue. Are there any items that any board members would like to pull from the agenda?
14.06.
Any others? Okay, can I have a motion to approve 12.01 through 16.04? Less 14.06.
So moved.
Alina, second. By Flora. Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm also in favor. Passes 8-0. Can I have a motion to approve 14.06? Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions?
So is this a new payroll clerk or is this an additional payroll clerk? I'm assuming we have a payroll clerk. I just don't remember discussion about previous discussion.
Yeah, I asked Anne Marie about this, and it is not a new position. Matt, do you remember how she described it?
It is, we've been having someone do it as like a consultant type thing, and
Oh, right, and someone's hired through the, from the list, through the,
Yes.
But the way it's worded, and when I read it in
like
the
a new
agenda, it looks
position.
like it's a creation of a payroll clerk.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I was like confused because I know we have a payroll
Right.
clerk, unless I'm oblivious, and I was like,
I
so we're
think-
getting another one?
Right, so should we scratch new in it?
I don't want to take it off if it's needed for district business, but I just was confused that
right.
we're creating another payroll clerk and we need two?
Is it because of its non-instructional possibly?
I thought somebody did this, like, they came in part-time.
Yeah, that's,
And did it, and that's why
But then we would have had it.
No, I know, I was confused by this too, but then when I didn't see Anne Marie tonight, and I thought this might be something that we need in order to keep people getting paid, I didn't know that we could pull it and chat about it, but I agree with Anthony, like, I don't want to keep
Right.
the district from having a payroll clerk, but I was confused by it as well.
I did, yeah, and I did ask her about it during agenda setting, and I know she said it was not a new position, but I,
It's not a new position in like the world of civil service, or it's not a new position to the district, because we
it's not
have
a
to
new
have a
position
payroll clerk.
to the district.
Right.
Are we renaming a position
That's,
because of the civil service descriptions?
yes,
That's how I read it, but I'm not sure. That's what I thought, but I
that
just,
is how I understood it. Do you remember, Matt?
I don't.
Do you remember, Flora?
Do you know if it would change anything if we voted on it the next meeting, or?
No, I'm fine with voting on it, but
We-
just
well,
please get clarification
We
for
can
it.
do
I
one of
just,
two things. We can wait till the next meeting
Yeah.
to just vote on it. You can vote on it, and we can provide the
I
clarification.
mean, that's important work if the employees aren't getting
Yeah,
paid.
I think,
No,
Anthony, if you're comfortable, we can just email the board.
I mean, just give me the answer as to,
I understand.
like, and I hope it's not a
apologize for not
creation
having
of a new
No.
position, so we have two.
It's absolutely not, because I know I did ask about that, but I'm pretty sure it's just because of the civil service.
Yeah, I'm That's fine. I just was, when I saw it and I was going through the agenda, I was like,
Yeah, no, believe me, it popped out at me as well.
okay.
Okay, any other comments? So we will get you clarification as soon as possible.
So can you get it to all of us?
Yes. Selective you.
Just Anthony. Anthony, can you let me know what you hear?
Have you voted? I'm sorry.
No.
I have a question after you vote.
Okay.
So,
Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm also in favor, passes 8-0.
just a quick question. So because of the vote, we will amend the calendar tomorrow, post it on the website, also email it out to everyone.
Do we need to make a vote to amend the calendar itself? No, because we're not changing.
Meaning it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a school day or anything. Okay. Okay, so,
Do you really think it needs to be, I mean, do we email out the calendars to everybody, or?
no.
If we change the dates, we
Yeah.
email it out.
We're not changing it, right? We're just
Right.
renaming it.
I'm just so
I
just repost it.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm also in favor, passes 8-0. Thank you.